You know that exact moment when your entire world folds in on itself, not slowly, like a book closing, but violently, like a building rigged for demolition? When the floor beneath you doesn't just crack, it vaporizes, and you're suspended in free fall, clawing at empty air while every cherished memory you've ever held suddenly curdles into something unrecognizable, something tainted? That was me, standing barefoot in my own bedroom at 8:47 p.m. on a sticky, suffocating Saturday night in Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of night where the humidity wraps around you like a damp blanket, and the crickets are so loud they almost drown out your own thoughts. The ceiling fan hummed overhead, its rhythmic clicking a metronome for my unraveling life. Max, our golden retriever, was snoring at the foot of the king-sized bed, his paws twitching as he chased dream rabbits. Down the hall, my daughter Emily, 18 years old and brilliant, was asleep, with her earbuds still in, a playlist of indie folk drifting softly from the tiny speakers. My son Daniel, 15 and lanky, had crashed after a marathon of video games, his controller still clutched loosely in one hand. My husband Marcus was 1,200 miles away in Dallas, Texas, closing a major deal for his architecture firm, a new performing arts center that would bear his firm's name. I had the house to myself. I had nothing to fear. The doors were locked, the alarm was set, and the neighborhood security patrol had just made their rounds. This was the life we had built, brick by careful brick, in the prestigious Myers Park neighborhood, where old oaks lined the streets and the homes whispered of old money and new ambition. Until I saw the jewelry box. It sat on the mahogany dresser in the corner of our master suite, a family heirloom that had passed through 3 generations of women whose blood ran in my veins like a quiet, resilient river. My great-grandmother, Eleanor, had received it as a wedding gift in 1912 from a master silversmith in Charleston, South Carolina. The box was crafted from rosewood and inlaid with mother-of-pearl, its velvet lining the color of merlot. It had survived a house fire that consumed half of my grandmother's childhood home. It had survived 2 cross-country moves, a flood in the basement of our first apartment, and a century of whispered secrets. I knew every nick in the wood, every patina mark on the brass hinges, the tiny scratch on the underside where my mother had carved her initials with a sewing needle when she was 12 years old. That box wasn't just furniture. It was a vessel. It held the prayers and dreams of the women who came before me. That night, the lid was cracked open. I crossed the room in 6 quick, barefoot steps, the hardwood cool beneath my feet, my heart already hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and lifted the lid fully. Inside the velvet-lined compartments, where my engagement ring should have rested in its little satin groove, where my mother's wedding pearls should have gleamed with their soft, creamy luster, where my grandmother's diamond brooch, the one shaped like a hummingbird, the one she wore to President Kennedy's inauguration, should have caught the lamplight and thrown tiny rainbows across the wall, there was nothing, not a single piece. The box was a hollow, gutted shell, a silent scream of absence. Every heirloom, every link to my past, had vanished as if they had never existed. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. My hands shook so violently that I nearly dropped it twice, my fingers clumsy and uncooperative. The screen glowed 8:47 p.m., Saturday, the second weekend in November, the week before Thanksgiving. I had planned to wear the pearls to dinner at my in-laws' beautiful lake house on Lake Norman. I had planned to pass the brooch to Emily on her wedding day, just as my grandmother had passed it to me, with a handwritten letter about resilience and hope. I called Marcus. The phone rang and rang, then clicked over to voicemail. "Hey, you've reached Marcus Davis. I'm in meetings all day, but leave a message and I'll get back to you." His voice, warm and steady, felt like a lifeline I couldn't grab. I hung up and dialed 911. The dispatcher, a woman with a soft, calming southern drawl that reminded me of my mother, told me to stay calm, to not touch anything, and assured me that officers from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department were on their way. I sat on the edge of the bed, the empty box cradled in my lap, like a wounded animal, and my mind began scrolling frantically through the Rolodex of people who had been in our home over the last month. The housekeeper, Maria, a sweet Salvadoran woman who had worked for us for 6 years and who had held me while I sobbed the day my mother passed. The landscapers, a crew of polite young men who never stepped foot inside the house. The neighbors, the Smythes, who had watered our hydrangeas and collected our mail when we escaped to the mountains for fall break. And my cousin Miranda. Miranda, who had a key to every lock, who came and went, like she owned the place, who had called herself my sister since we were toddlers, in matching Easter dresses. Miranda, the name lodged in my chest like a fishhook, sharp and barbed and impossible to ignore. We'd grown up together in a small town in Georgia, 2 girls born just 3 months apart, to sisters who were as close as twins. Our mothers were inseparable, and they raised us to be the same. Miranda was my maid of honor at my wedding, resplendent in a dusty blue gown, holding my bouquet as I said my vows. She held my hand in the delivery room when Emily took her first breath, her eyes wet with tears of joy. She was the godmother to both of my children, a title she wore like a crown. When my mother died of ovarian cancer 6 years ago, Miranda moved into my guest room for an entire month. She spoon-fed me chicken soup when I couldn't eat, held me while I screamed into pillows, and gently steered me back toward the land of the living when I was sure I would drown in grief. I trusted her with my bank codes, my children's schedules, my deepest fears, and the darkest corners of my heart. She knew where we hid the spare key in the garden, inside a fake rock under the azaleas. She knew the passcode to the garage Emily's birthday. She knew the jewelry box was never locked because, as my grandmother used to say, her voice a soft southern lilt, family doesn't steal from family, and locks only keep out honest people anyway. I was an event planner by trade. Catherine Davis Events was one of the most sought-after firms in the Southeast, and I'd spent 2 decades building a reputation for flawless execution under pressure. I'd handled bridezillas who threw champagne flutes, a venue that caught fire the night before a 500-person gala, and a caterer who literally vanished into thin air the morning of a corporate summit. I could read people the way a conductor reads a score. I could spot a lie from across a crowded ballroom. And yet, I had completely and utterly missed whatever had rotted and festered inside my own cousin. The thought made me physically nauseous. The police arrived within 15 minutes, 2 uniformed officers, a young man with a crew cut and a calm demeanor, and a seasoned woman with kind eyes, followed shortly by a detective named Sarah Jennings. Detective Jennings was a sharp-eyed woman in her early 50s, with a no-nonsense bob of silver-streaked hair and a badge that had seen real, complicated cases. She had the kind of quiet authority that immediately made me feel both safe and terrified. She walked me through the entire house, room by room, her pen scratching notes into a small leather-bound pad. That's when the gut punches multiplied and the true scope of the theft became horrifyingly clear. My grandmother's silver tea set, the one she'd polished every Sunday afternoon while humming hymns, was missing from the dining room hutch. The empty space where it had sat for years was a glaring, dust-free rectangle. My mother's antique china, hand-painted with delicate magnolia blossoms, was gone from the buffet. A diamond necklace my father had given me for my 30th birthday, the last gift he ever gave me before his heart gave out, unexpectedly had vanished from my closet safe. The safe's combination was our wedding anniversary. Miranda knew it. She had been there when Marcus and I said it. Detective Jennings's team dusted for fingerprints. The black powder clung to surfaces like a shadow. She found Miranda's prints on the jewelry box, on the hutch, on the closet safe. They were clear, unmistakable. Security footage from our Ring doorbell, which I pulled up on my phone with shaking hands, showed Miranda's white Toyota Camry pulling into our driveway at exactly 2:14 p.m. that afternoon. She got out, used her key to enter the front door, and then left at 3:47 p.m., carrying a large, overstuffed canvas tote bag that I didn't recognize. She had a key, she had opportunity, she had what looked like a motive, but I couldn't yet fathom what it was. What could possibly drive someone I loved like a sister to gut my family's history? Detective Jennings was careful and methodical. "Miss Davis," she said, her voice low and steady. "These prints and the camera footage place her here. No question. But we don't have footage of her physically removing the items from the house. If she claims she was just visiting and the theft happened after she left, maybe a window was unlocked, maybe someone else came by a jury might not convict. We need more. We need a trail. We need a confession or a paper trail." I nodded, my jaw tight. I was a planner. It was what I did. I started planning. That same night, still running on adrenaline and a fury I didn't know I possessed. I drove to Miranda's apartment in Gastonia, a tired complex off Franklin Boulevard with a flickering vacancy sign and a neglected swimming pool that hadn't been cleaned since the last administration. The air was thick with the smell of cheap mulch and car exhaust. I banged on her door with the side of my fist until she opened it, wearing faded yoga pants and a smirk that made my blood boil. The apartment behind her smelled like stale coffee, burnt microwave popcorn, and something sour, the unmistakable scent of secrets rotting in the dark. "Where is it, Miranda?" I didn't yell. I couldn't. My voice was a blade, thin and cold and dangerously calm. "Where's what? Kathy? Your sense of humor?" She tilted her head, her eyes the same hazel as mine. A genetic echo that now felt like a cruel joke holding a light I didn't recognize. Or maybe I had seen it for years and chosen, in my desperate need for family, to call it love. My grandmother's brooch, the pearls, the china, my father's necklace. Everything you stole from my house this afternoon, while my children slept down the hall. She laughed, a short, brittle, ugly sound. "You're absolutely delusional. I was at your place dropping off a casserole I made for Emily. She mentioned she was stressed about her college applications, so I made her that chicken and rice thing she likes. I let myself in, left it in the fridge with a little note, and left. That's the whole story. You always assume the worst about me. Catherine, you always have. It's exhausting." The safe was opened. "Miranda, everything is gone. You knew the combination. Or you told someone else and forgot. Or you left it open yourself because you've been so scattered lately. Everyone in the family has noticed. Aunt Linda asked me last week if you were okay. She said you've been forgetting appointments, mixing up dates. We're all worried about you. Maybe you misplaced the jewelry and just can't remember." The gaslighting was so smooth, so expertly delivered, that for a horrifying split second I almost questioned my own sanity. Almost. But I had the footage. I had the prints. I had decades of conditioning that told me to trust her, to forgive her, to make excuses for her. And I had a fresh, blazing, incandescent rage that told me to burn that conditioning to the ground and salt the earth where it stood. "I'm going to find proof," I said, stepping back into the humid, oppressive night air, my voice carrying a promise I intended to keep. "And when I do, I'm going to bury you with it. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen piece of my history, I'm going to use it to make sure you never hurt anyone again." "Good luck," she called after me, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're going to need it. You've always been so dramatic. Kathy, just like your mother." The next morning, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I called a private investigator named Tom Fairchild, a retired FBI agent with a thick, molasses, slow Southern accent and a formidable reputation for digging up things people wanted to stay buried. Tom operated out of a small, unassuming office in a strip mall on South Boulevard. He was a large man with kind, tired eyes and hands that had seen decades of human deceit. I gave him Miranda's full name, her social security number, her known addresses, her entire history. I told him to find everything: financial records, communication trails, storage unit leases, pawn shop receipts. I didn't care how deep he had to dig or how dark the corners got. I paid his retainer from my business account without hesitation. Catherine Davis Events was thriving, and I would pour every single cent into saving my family's legacy and exposing the truth. What Tom found over the next 3 weeks completely rewired my understanding of evil. Miranda hadn't just impulsively stolen my heirlooms. She had been methodically and patiently draining me for years, like a parasite that had burrowed so deep I couldn't feel it anymore. Starting around the time my mother died, when my grief made me vulnerable and distracted, She began lifting small, inconspicuous items, a gold bracelet here, a set of silver spoons there. Things I wouldn't immediately miss. She pawned them across state lines, from Rock Hill to Spartanburg to Asheville, carefully avoiding the Charlotte shops that might recognize my family's pieces or ask questions. She'd quietly racked up thousands of dollars, which she used to fund a secret, lavish lifestyle. I never knew she had expensive dinners at upscale restaurants, a secret credit card with a shocking balance, and a leased luxury SUV she kept hidden at a friend's garage 2 towns over. All this while she cried poverty at every family gathering, while she borrowed money from my parents' estate that she never intended to repay, while she played the role of the struggling, put-upon cousin who just couldn't catch a break. But the theft was only the first, most visible layer of her depravity. Tom uncovered a sprawling, meticulously organized trail of emails and text messages that showed Miranda had been waging a covert, relentless campaign to demolish my reputation, my sanity, and my entire life. She had sent anonymous tips to my biggest corporate clients, claiming I had overbilled them or shared confidential information. She'd told our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, that I was abusing prescription medication, that Marcus was having a sordid affair with a colleague, that Emily was failing out of high school and using drugs. She'd whispered poison to my mother's remaining bridge club, suggesting I had manipulated my way into my parents' will and cut her out of what was rightfully hers. She'd crafted a narrative so complete, so insidious, that I was painted as unhinged, dangerous, and a total fraud. Several longtime clients quietly canceled their contracts. Friends I'd known for decades stopped returning my calls. I had felt the growing chill in my social circle, but had foolishly blamed it on my own busy schedule and the normal drift of adult friendships. I never suspected that the cold wind was blowing directly from my cousin's mouth. And then, on a gray Tuesday morning, Tom handed me a thick manila envelope with a subject line that made my stomach lurch: project replacement. Inside were printed emails from a burner account she had created under a fake name. Miranda had been planning, in excruciating and chilling detail, to erase me entirely from existence. She didn't just want my jewelry. She wanted my entire life. She wanted my husband. She drafted long, intimate messages to Marcus, pretending to be a deeply concerned cousin, gently suggesting that I was losing my mind, that he deserved someone stable and loving, that she could be that person for him. She'd researched how to mimic my signature. There were practice sheets with my name written dozens of times. She'd looked into how to transfer property deeds, how to liquidate my retirement accounts, and how to petition for emergency custody of Emily and Daniel if I were suddenly deemed incapacitated. The children, she referred to my children, in one particularly sickening message, as the final prize, as if they were trophies to be won in her twisted game. And she'd meticulously planned my death. I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cold and unyielding under my elbows, and read a thread of encrypted messages between Miranda and a shady contact she had found on a dark web forum dedicated to permanent solutions. They discussed methods with a clinical detachment that made my skin crawl: a staged car accident on Interstate 77, perhaps forcing my Mercedes off the road late at night, tampering with the brake lines so it would look like a tragic mechanical failure. A slow-acting poison slipped into my morning coffee when she visited something untraceable, something that mimicked a sudden heart attack. She had a chillingly specific timeline. By Christmas, she wrote in one message, "Catherine will be a memory, and I'll be the one the family turns to. I'll be the one comforting Marcus. I'll be the mother those kids deserve. Finally, I'll have the life that was always meant to be mine." My hands went completely numb. I read the words again, then a third time, then a fourth, as if sheer repetition could make them less real, less horrifying. Instead, each reading crystallized something deep in my core. I had spent my entire life believing in second chances, in the fundamental goodness of people, in the healing power of forgiveness. Miranda had taken every single one of those beautiful, naive beliefs and twisted them into a weapon aimed directly at my heart. But now, for the first time, I had a weapon of my own: the truth. Documented, time-stamped, undeniable, and utterly damning. I called Detective Jennings immediately. She came to my house within the hour, and I handed over everything: the emails, the financial records, the pawn shop receipts, the burner account details, the dark web messages. Her face, usually so stoic and composed, visibly paled as she read through the murder plot. She opened a formal, multi-agency investigation on the spot, and within days, the Gaston County District Attorney was building an airtight case for grand larceny, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy to commit murder. Miranda was arrested at her squalid apartment on a cool Thursday morning. I watched the police body cam footage later, my hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. I watched the way her face crumpled from smug confidence to utter shock, the way she screamed that I was a liar and a manipulator, that I had planted everything, that I was just jealous of her beauty and her youth. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists with a final, metallic sound that echoed in my chest. For the first time in months, I took a full, deep, shuddering breath. The trial took place the following spring at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse in downtown Charlotte. The courtroom was packed to the rafters with family members who had once believed every single one of Miranda's lies. They now stared at her with wide, wounded, bewildered eyes. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia Miranda's own mother, refused to even sit behind her daughter. She sat on my side of the gallery, clutching my hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. I testified for 3 grueling, emotionally draining hours, my voice somehow remaining steady as I described the hollow emptiness of the jewelry box, the ghostly absence of the china, and the sickening email that began with the words, "Once she's out of the picture, I can finally have what I deserve." The prosecutor, a brilliant and compassionate assistant DA named Jamal Carter, projected Miranda's burner account messages onto a massive screen for the entire courtroom to see. The jury watched her own words appear in stark black and white. "She's so easy to manipulate. She trusts me like a dog trusts its owner. It's almost too easy. She'll never see it coming." Miranda's defense was desperation dressed in a cheap blazer. She claimed I had masterminded an elaborate frame job, that the emails were sophisticated fabrications, that Tom Fairchild was a hired gun willing to bend the truth for a paycheck. But the digital forensics were utterly airtight. The metadata on every document was irrefutable. The pawn shop records matched her driver's license perfectly. The dark web contact, a sniveling man from a hacker collective, testified in exchange for immunity and confirmed every detail of their correspondence. When the verdict was finally read guilty on all counts, every single one, Miranda let out a primal, guttural scream of my name that was so loud and so raw that the bailiff had to physically restrain her. "You'll regret this, Catherine," she shrieked, her face contorted with pure, undiluted hatred. "You'll see. I'll get out one day and I will finish exactly what I started. You're dead, you hear me?" I met her eyes one last time. I felt no fear, only a vast, echoing exhaustion. "No, Miranda," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You're finished. It's over." She was sentenced to 28 years in the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women, with no possibility of parole for at least 20. The judge, a stern woman with silver spectacles, also issued a permanent no-contact order protecting me, my children, and my husband. As the gavel fell with a resonant crack, I felt something deep in my chest shift and settle. It wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was a quiet, profound tectonic release, the feeling of solid ground slowly hardening beneath my feet after years of walking on shifting sand. Rebuilding was not a straight line. It was a labyrinth filled with traps of memory and sudden, unexpected grief. For months afterward, I flinched involuntarily at the sound of a key turning in the front door. I woke up drenched in sweat from nightmares where Miranda stood silently over my bed, holding a pillow and smiling. Marcus, who had flown home from Dallas the very night of the discovery and had never let me out of his sight since, held me through every single panic attack with a fierce protective tenderness. He took an emergency leave of absence from his firm, and together we started intensive couples therapy to painstakingly untangle the web of lies and manipulation that had nearly choked the life out of our marriage. Our children Emily and Daniel had to process the incomprehensible fact that their godmother, the woman who had taught them to ride bikes and baked their birthday cakes, had actively wanted their mother dead. We found a gifted family therapist in the Dilworth neighborhood who specialized in betrayal trauma, and we went to her office every single week, sitting in a circle on a plush, overstuffed sofa while the afternoon sunlight streamed through the blinds, and we slowly, painfully learned to trust the world again. My career had taken a serious hit, but I fought back with everything I had. I called every client who had canceled, armed with the court documents, the news articles, and a new, hard-won humility. Some came back, some didn't, and I had to learn to make peace with that. I launched a new, deeply personal arm of my business called Catherine Davis Signature Events, and I poured all of my pain, my grief, and my resilience into creating experiences that celebrated the strength of the human spirit. I organized a massive fundraising gala for the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, an event that raised over $250,000 and put me on the cover of Charlotte magazine under the headline, "From Victim to Victor: One Woman's Fight for Justice." And the heirlooms, most of them were recovered through Tom's diligent work and the cooperation of pawn shop owners who were horrified to learn the truth. The silver tea set was traced to a dusty antique store in Asheville, sitting on a shelf next to old clocks. The hand-painted china was found in a storage unit off Wilkinson Boulevard, wrapped in old newspaper. The precious brooch and pearls, turned up in a safe deposit box Miranda had opened under a fake identity at a bank in Concord. When I finally clasped my mother's pearls around my neck for the first time after the trial, I stood in front of the mirror and wept, not from sorrow, but from a deep marrow-level, cleansing relief. They were home. I was home. I started speaking publicly, first to small groups of women in church basements, then at regional conferences, then on national morning shows. I told the story of the empty jewelry box and the cousin who tried to delete me from existence. I spoke about trust, about the subtle red flags we often ignore in the name of family loyalty, about the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people who clap loudest at your success are quietly, patiently plotting your complete downfall. I founded a support network called Sisterhood Restored, dedicated to women who had been betrayed by family members. We now have chapters in 47 states. We hold healing retreats in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where women are encouraged to scream into pillows, to write letters they'll never send, and to slowly, carefully learn to trust themselves and their own judgment again. 3 years have passed. Miranda sits in the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women, her appeals exhausted, her visitors' log completely and utterly empty. Her own mother changed her last name and moved to a quiet retirement community in Florida. Unable to bear the weight of association, I don't think about Miranda much anymore. But when I do, it's with a strange, distant, almost clinical pity. She wanted my life so desperately. And in the end, she ended up with no life at all, just a concrete cell, and the ghosts of her own choices. I am 45 years old now. My marriage is stronger than it has ever been. Marcus and I renewed our wedding vows on the shore of Lake Norman at sunset, with Emily as my radiant maid of honor and Daniel, so tall and handsome in his suit, walking me proudly down the makeshift aisle. My business is thriving beyond my wildest dreams. Our house is full of laughter, and the cozy smell of apple cinnamon candles, and the comforting thump, thump, thump of Max's tail against the hardwood floors. The jewelry box still sits on the mahogany dresser, and it is no longer empty. Inside, the pearls and the brooch rest on their velvet beds, and I've added new treasures that represent this chapter of my life: a charm bracelet Emily gave me for Mother's Day, a silver locket with a tiny photo of my parents on their wedding day, and a small silver keychain that Daniel brought back from a school trip to Washington, D.C., because he said it reminded him of me. Every single morning, before the chaos of the day begins, I open that box, not to check if anything is missing. I'm long past that fear, but to remind myself that I am still here. That I am the keeper of my own story, the author of my own chapters. That the ground beneath my feet is solid and unshakable. Because I built it myself, one hard-won truth at a time. If this story hit you right in the heart, Please take a second to tap that like button. It truly helps more people discover these videos. Then drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had someone you considered family betray you in a way you never saw coming? How did you find your footing again? I read every single comment, and your story could be the one that gives a stranger the courage to keep going. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a new story. I release powerful, true-to-life dramas like this one every single day at 7 a.m. Eastern. Share this video with a friend who's going through a tough family betrayal. Sometimes just knowing you're not crazy and you're not alone makes all the difference. Got a story idea you'd love to see me bring to life? Leave it down in the comments. Your suggestion might just be the next one I tell. Until next time, hold your circle close, trust your instincts, and never, ever forget you are far stronger, far braver, and far more resilient than you give yourself credit for. See you in the next story. Loved this story. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a video. I upload brand new stories every single day. Gripping, emotional, and packed with twists that'll keep you guessing until the very end. Don't forget to like this video if it gave you all the feels. Comment below. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you handle it? I read every single comment. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the best lessons come from other people's experiences. Got a story idea? Drop it in the comments. Your suggestion might just become the next video on this channel. Subscribe now and join our growing family of story lovers. New videos drop daily at 7 a.m. EST. Perfect to watch with your morning coffee. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. Because you are. You always have been, and you always will be.